Hi, and welcome to Twin Flames Between Worlds podcast. My name is Tabitha.
And I'm Liesl.
And welcome back to our fourth episode of our spoiler foreshadowing Court of Thorns and Roses. So, yay, welcome back. So in our main talks, we just talked about chapters 16 through 21 and about Cal and Mai, of course.
Oof, that was a time.
I feel like people are going to get sick of us talking about
Probably, but it's an important moment.
It is. It's like, well, okay, it's important for the story, it's important for relationships, important for everything. So again,
it's important for me.
Right. So again, I want to reiterate to the people, this is a spoiler episode. So again, if you haven't read the whole series, do not listen to this, or if you do, okay. So yes, we will be so our topic for this week is about Tamlin.
Oh, this is gonna be
R.I.P. Not dead. He's not dead. He might be dead to us, but we have been waiting because I feel like in this whole section, I've had to kind of keep specifically, Lisa, I'm going to call you out on a tight leash in terms of like, yes, we understand Tamlin gets worse and worse as the story progresses, and so this is our time to talk about it. But you know, we got to remember for the people that haven't read the first book, you know, it's like we loved him back then. So
yes, it always starts, I think, for everyone that reads, most people that read, it starts off with love and Tamlin, and then by the end of it, it's like, we're gonna kill him. We're gonna kill him ourselves.
It's every hindsight relationship, though, because, you know, when you're in love and you're in it, you don't see it, and then when you like take back and look at it, you know, years later, you'll be like, why the fuck was I in that? So I guess overall, talking about him in the first book, I mean, that's what the whole seasons are for, but I think I loved him for the fact that, and I kind of said this in the first episode, he wasn't that typical male protagonist that was the asshole at first. Like, usually in most of the fantasies, he'll like, you know, talk shit to the woman, or it's kind of like a bully romance in terms of underestimating the woman and, you know, kind of like trash talking her, and then, but secretly, right? but then secretly likes her, and then, you know, won't say his feelings until the end. Like, Tamlin, granted, part of it was because of the curse. Mm-hmm. So we got to remember that part of the reason why he was being nice with her at the beginning was because he was trying to get the curse to work, and then he just kind of was like, yeah, this flirting thing isn't working, and then decides not to. But I liked him as a character. I thought he definitely was that, you know, it seemed like he was humbled in his power, if that made sense. Mm-hmm. He didn't want his power, but then of course that led to issues because, you know, later on there's like a good balance between being humbled by your power and then fighting it. Mm-hmm. Because,
and I think there was, sorry to interrupt, there was like another thing as well, which of course we'll get into when we move on to the other books, of the fact that because he didn't want his power, and, you know, we learned that he spent time in his father's war band, he wasn't actually like necessarily trained for taking on this title. And so that not wanting to do it combined with not really knowing how to do it does not make a good combo.
Yeah, and I guess again, perfect Sarah making it seem not a red flag right away. It's like, oh, you know, in bare bones, oh, that's a humbled guy right there. Makes sense. But then once you start getting into the nitty gritty and starting to get to know him more, it's like, oh no, that kind of mentality just kind of dooms dooms him.
I think, it did start off good, and of course, you know, like everyone, I started off really liking him. What I liked most about him was the fact that he encouraged Feyre to find her own purpose, rather than just having to rely on her family anymore. I really liked that he encouraged her painting. You know, me being a creative person as well, for both of us actually. Like Tabby said, she's kind of had to keep me on a shorter leash because I really don't like Tamlin anymore, mostly because I feel betrayed as well, of like, you started off so good. Why did you do that? Why? Just why?
I totally get it. I totally understand. I told Lisa, it's like, well, I've also had to, you know, I marinated on this book since 2018, so I'm a expert at this point in being like, oh yeah, you like Tamlin? Okay, like, oh, just wait.
Yeah, I remember when we did our first book talk, well, yeah, kind of throughout the whole book, anytime I mentioned like, oh, Tamlin's like so sweet and stuff, I would say like one certain thing, and Tabby would just burst out laughing, and I would not know why. I'd ask her like, what did I say? And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. It's like, what's going on?
I think it's funny though, because I'm really good at, I'm actually kind of of a good poker face person.
You are so infuriating when it comes to that, though.
Because nobody knows why I'm laughing. And then even when she did find out, it wasn't that it was necessarily funny. It was that, oh shit, she just doesn't know yet. But yeah, I think his progression, I think how he treated her was typical princely guy. But he also seemed independent. It wasn't this codependency relationship. You know, there were so many times where he'd go off at the border and, you know, kill things or whatever the hell he was doing. So it never seemed like it was necessarily dependent. So I liked that element. I also just liked how he treated her. How do I say this? The romance, because I mean, we can talk about the romance at a later date specifically with them, but Tamlin was what Feyre needed when the moment happened. Because of how she was treated with her family, she needed somebody who felt, you know, that they cared and she was protected and that somebody would take her side and she wouldn't, you know, or sorry, in the metaphor of always somebody having my back and feeling like there wasn't anybody before.
Yeah, she needed someone to take care of her. And in that moment, well, not only just to take care of her, she needed someone to take care of her family or help her family first and then to help her. She needed both of those things and it was really hard for her to find. And so when Tamlin came along and, you know, bust in their door, all aggressive like, dramatic like, even though she was, you know, worried at the time, she eventually got to the point where she realized that her family was being taken care of and she was being taken care of. And I think that's why it worked at first. And I think also Tamlin wanted to take care of her as well because he saw her and how she was living. And I think just as the story progresses, that combo, that relationship grows.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't with everybody about the whole lust thing, about how it was all, because I feel like once they know about Rhys's and Feyre's relationship, they're just like, oh, well, Tamlin and hers was just lust. It's like, no, that's not true.
No. It was a different kind of relationship.
They hated each other, well, if anything, he liked her, but and appreciated like her, but she did not. And he broke down her walls for her. And that's something that, you know, Rhys had to pick up the pieces, but in the moment, he broke down those walls that she built over herself over years. So I thought that was needed, and that was needed in her journey in general. But I think what then got me about the whole ending of the first book, I mean, knowing what we know, it's infuriating, but I totally understood what Under the Mountain was in terms of this amalgamation of 50 years of them being just tormented, tortured, anything under the moon about with this woman, well, Amarantha. And I got why he was being silent, if that makes sense, when I read it the first time. Because it made sense why he wasn't trying to, you know, like plead for her case. Because if he did that, then Amarantha definitely would have, you know, put her up like Claire.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Which
put her on a
I
spinning
guess,
wheel.
Yeah, in hindsight, it does make sense.
But, and I will say, I read this up with my manager this week. I will say when I first read this, also a change in perspective, right? I'm 23 now. Back when I read this when I was 18, I was in love with the Undermountain essence of Tamlin on the third night. Because, you know, we've been building up this romance and we've been building up Tamlin as this perfect white knight character. And the one time that he gets to be with her, he's like backing out with her, almost basically trying to fuck her in like this back room area for like one moment, because in my head, I know you're rolling your eyes. In my head, it was a romantic thing because they thought maybe the next day they would all be dead. Because in my mind, it was definitely it's the end of the world. What am I gonna do? Or, you know, when someone asks you that question, what would you do if you knew today was your last day? Hamlin's idea was to fuck her, I guess.
Where they could be caught. In hindsight.
Yeah.
But my initial feeling about that, I just remember being super confused because, like, you know, it was like the moment of, for once, Rhys didn't want Feyre with him in the hall, and then she just looks to her side and she sees Tamlin there, and like he doesn't say anything, he just like, you know, jerks his head over, and like I was just super confused. It's like, wait, how did you get away? Hasn't Amarantha like been literally holding your hand this whole time? Like, how does she not realize that you're gone? And also I was super confused because I was totally imagining like just like a janitor's closet.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Like this
What
dark janitor's closet that somehow Reese was like in or something. I mean, I know he snuck in, but
what if this is a conspiracy, it's not like valid, but what if Reese did that? What if like Reese distracted her? And maybe Reese was thinking, oh, this is time, because remember, as we know, he was, falling for her at this point. What if he was trying to get Amarantha away so that he could let her escape? And then, but then they have their moment, and of course, they can't get away now.
Right, so Reese was giving, like, Tamlin the option to get Feyre out of there, and Tamlin did not take that at all. No, he's like, well, I'm not even really gonna think about letting you go, which, kind of comes up again in the second book. I'd rather just fuck you.
What's infuriating, actually. And then again, now that I'm 23, reading it again, it's infuriating because, Tamlin, as a character, right, he's supposed to be loyal. And so, actually, I think this was my dad who brought this up, believe it or not.
Really?
So my dad finished the book, by the way.
Oh, good for him.
And he's so excited to read the second.
Good. That's a reaction we want.
But he brought up a good point of, okay, so he cares. So his bullshit reasoning for not saying anything with Feyre was because he didn't want Amarantha to see how much he cared, right? Then why the hell was, when Lucian was getting all that stuff happening to him, Tamlin was like pleading for his life at every second?
True.
That's kind of a catch-22. Is it why were you, is it the bros before hoes mentality, maybe? Like,
honestly, that's sometimes what it feels like, but other times the way Tam treats Lucian just feels like just Tamlin feels like he needs to be on his own.
And that gets brought up in the third book, because remember, like, with the whipping with the one-eye with the sentry? I forgot, and it wasn't a red flag until I reread A Court of Thorns, but he whips Lucian.
Oh, that's right. Tamlin did have to do that.
He whipped Lucian 20 times. Amarantha, quote-unquote, made him do it. That was where I was, again, when I reread it, I was like, dude, Tamlin, there's always another option. I think Tamlin's biggest character flaw is he thinks that there's only one road.
Yeah.
Or he thinks that there's two options, either the good one or the bad one.
Right.
And he doesn't find a middle road. And so he whipped his best friend. And obviously in the heat of the moment of Under the Mountain, nobody really thought about it. But then thinking back on it, it's like, holy shit, that's traumatic for both of them. Mostly Lucian, but...
And Lucian is like super close with the sentries and stuff. Like he was really close with Andreas at first. That's why he took over, well, partly because it was his duty, but also his honor to take over Andreas's shift and patrol. And so the fact that Tamlin had to whip Lucian and then uses that as the same punishment on the sentry and just had Lucian watch. And of course, I mean, there was the whole situation because we were in Feyre's perspective of Feyre like just backing into Lucian and like Lucian being like there as a support for her. But I also feel like that could have been like Feyre being support for him. Because Lucian was super like sus of Feyre also at that time.
But he still knew that she cared, even if he didn't trust her necessarily about what was going on. He trusted about, not condoning somebody innocent getting whipped out of nowhere. But so I think Under the Mountain I didn't see coming in terms of how I thought, because it definitely paints that picture of the hero and the heroine one, they're gonna ride off in the sunset and be together. And getting into Akamath, Mist and Fury, that was so traumatic and so like, or especially if anyone's been in an emotionally or, in worst case, a physically abusive relationship, it's just such a trigger. The fact that I could count on, multiple hands. She was having nightmares in the middle of the night and so was he, but he didn't get up with her when she was throwing up. He just kind of let her be on her own.
As if like turning your back to that, as if ignoring it will make it go away.
Or whatever mentality he was thinking, he's like, oh, maybe she was embarrassed. I don't want her to feel like she's embarrassed with me. It's like, that's not what a lover would do. No. Just kind of like looking away from it. The fact that the whole party situation in terms of, changing, because again, we have to remember that, oh God, okay, so you don't probably know this reference. Do you know Love is Blind?
No, I've heard of it, but no.
Basically, it's a show, I mean, probably some of the audience audience knows it, but okay, trust me, there's a point. Love is Blind is basically the premise of the show is you fall in love with a person without necessarily seeing them. And then it's an experiment to start adding real world elements like physicality, friends, family, work together. So, right, you go from A Court of Thorns, where it was literally just Lucian, Tamlin, and Feyre. A very Bubble-esque scenario where running the kingdom wasn't a thing because it was in turmoil. And so they all it was them and their relationship, so they could work on it.
Right.
Then as you move, it's almost like that show where you start adding in other elements, and that's when things start to crumble. Because he added trying to get his court back into after the disrepair of Amarantha, adding the trauma onto both of them, but also him in terms of his responsibilities. And then trying to quote unquote get things back to normal in terms of, courtiers, dukes, duchesses, the nobility. It added so much strain to their relationship that's why that ended, because Tamlin couldn't multitask worth a damn. And
it didn't seem like he wanted to either.
Yeah, he was.
It definitely felt like he treated Feyre very much of like, well, I won her. Like, he literally treated her like as a trophy wife. Like, he's like, I won. So now, like, she's just expected to do whatever I say or just like be there whenever I want her or whatever. And it's like,
if
it's not healthy.
If Feyre stayed with Tamlin, I feel like she would have ended up like the Autumn Lady in like a really bad way. That would have happened. Yeah. Because Tamlin has this sort of singular, almost like horse-blinded mindset. He's like, because he never learned how to be a High Lord, he expects it like it's some cookie cutter thing.
Right.
We have to do this. We have to, and we can talk about the tithe, but all these other elements, you have to be a lady. We have to get married in a certain way. We have to, what was the other thing? You have to like go with me to these court functions, and you have to sit with me while tides go. So many rules going on, and especially him forgetting that she just died, right? She just turned from a human woman to a fae creature. He doesn't know any of the politics, doesn't know anything about the norms that are supposed to go on. He just thinks it's such one way.
Which also, speaking about that transition, if we go back real quick to the end of the first book, Tamlin, like after she died, he just wasn't really hanging out with her. He was like showing her off to everyone and just talking with everyone. And then, from Feyre's perspective, it's like he finally noticed that she was feeling off. And then they literally go back to the room and fuck. It's like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah. So
that's not what she needs.
Yeah. So also their relationship, I guess, like in the beginning, and we can talk about this more when we're in our like specific one about that. But you brought it up, Liesl, with me. It was so eloquently, said their relation. It was kind of like in this weird unorthodox way. Like sex was their main thing. They were great at it. It was good. That was their way of communicating, obviously.
But it wasn't actually communicating.
It wasn't like, it was his way of apologizing without actually saying it verbally.
Yeah.
Or even the sometimes he did apologize, it was that, and I'll do better, fuck, and it wasn't, and we're not just being crass for the sake of being crass. It wasn't making love then.
No.
It was definitely like a I'm sorry fuck, and then moving on. And then
it was like fuck her to make her forget or something.
And then the whole beginning of Mist and Fury is Tamlin doing something to piss her off, him apologizing for it for a little while, doing better, and then Rhys would come in, and then as soon as she got back from Rhys after the week, it would go downhill. And every single time that happened, everyone got worse and worse. Like, I think the first time that I started questioning Tamlin, I gave him the benefit of the doubt for like maybe 5 chapters. And it wasn't until that first time she got back from Rhys's, they were all in his study, and instead of, this is the first time they've been away since Under the Mountain, first time they haven't been in each other's vicinity. Like, and if you could expect as somebody who's in love with this person who did die, and you watch them die, to just sit her down and say, oh no, I need the details about my enemy's haven. It's like, are you gonna ask me if I'm okay? Like, are we gonna actually maybe talk and sit down first? And that's totally a callback. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just commenting. That's totally a fucking difference between Rhys and Tam.
That's literally what I was gonna say, because then when we flash forward to ACOTAR, when she comes back after going to the Spring Court, he obviously wants to know what happened. happen, but he's letting her do what she needs to do. Hey, I need to take a bath. I need to like get situated. And then he's like, oh, I'm gonna, ravish you or something. And then they, do what they do, and then they talk about it.
Yeah. They like appreciate that they're finally back together after a month.
Mm-hmm. And so that's when I definitely started doubting Tamlin. And of course, when he bursts at his study and just evaporates everything, and she puts her shield up.
Those were so fucking toxic.
It's like that's where it started moving to abusive. I mean, obviously Tamlin never physically hit her, but he might as well have.
Yeah.
And he always kept using the excuse of, well, my anger just gets the better. That's like, it says every abuser ever.
That's not a fucking excuse. It's like, oh, sorry, I can't control it. Well, why don't you fucking try?
Yeah, it just, anyway, so now you're starting to see me come out, and obviously Tamlin makes me mad. I don't ever deny that. I just do understand. I can put myself back into the mindset of Feyre when she was going through it the first time.
Which you can do much better than me.
That's just
it is so hard for me to like hold back on my discussion of Tamlin.
So yeah, and so we obviously don't see him throughout the rest of Mist and Fury until the end. Well, necessarily we do hear a couple times when Rhys says Tamlin has completely shut off his borders,
or when Lucian arrives and is just like, yeah, he's going insane.
Which you don't want to hear. I haven't had too many friends go through this, but I do remember one friend. I mean, it was a friend of a friend scenario, but yeah, like I think what ended up happening was her ex like came outside and did like donuts in her freaking lawn.
What the fuck?
Yeah, to like scare her.
Like in car?
Yeah, in a car.
Oh my god.
So, I mean, I haven't had too many examples of this, but yeah, that's not a healthy feeling, or that wouldn't make me want to come back.
No. It's like, hey, come back, otherwise I'm gonna threaten you and keep stalking you and shit.
It's like, no. And obviously, holy shit, the betrayal. He literally talked the whole time in the first book about how he would stand up to tyranny, how he wouldn't be with slavery. And I don't care what you say, the fact that he even made the decision to go to the King of Hybern and ask for his help was complete bullshit. No.
Oh, it pisses me off. Nothing says come back to me and I still love you than going to your sworn enemy and making a deal for property, ownership of property over a person.
The person who fucking raised Amarantha to be who she was. The person
who raised Amarantha to literally destroy Feyre.
It was like, Tamlin, you are so deranged at this point. And actually, you bring up the whole part about the property thing, is that Tamlin was so delusioned in the thinking that was love. The fact that, and the thing was, he did love her for a time, but then he got entitled to it because he thought that, it's almost like he got so caught up in his revenge plot against Rhys that he's like, oh, there's no way that Feyre would actually like Rhys's company. She loves my company. Why would she actually mind Rhys? But
why don't
anyway,
you take a fucking look, Tam?
It was the interesting thing that I think it was Varian's sister.
Cressida.
Thank God. Oh my God.
I kept wanting to say Sarah Doyle. I'm like, wait, that's not it.
No. Yeah, so Cressida of the Summer Court, when they were there during Mist and Fury, and she said, oh, well, Tamlin has the law right. And they were like, what? And Rhys got super fucking mad because she's basically said that if Rhys took her away and was, if that she was kidnapped, or not even that, if it was against her will, that she was with him, then they had, as a court, an obligation to return Feyre back to her rightful owner. And she said that, and I was like,
She is not property.
I don't know much about the Fae world, but it's kind of a little sexist, I'm not gonna lie.
It is so bad. Which is so much more why I like Rhys. Well, one of the bajillion reasons why I choose Rhys over Tam. It's like, Rhys, at least, if Feyre wanted to go back, Rhys would have accepted it and let her go. However, if they ever took her away without her consent, he would raise them all to the ground and do everything in his power to get her back.
The stars would fall. He would have let Amren go. That would have
There would
He would
be no event there.
the spring court would be in ruins right now if that was what it is.
They wouldn't even be in ruins. They just would be non-existent.
Right. And it's, oh God, it's crazy because, you know, obviously the end of Mist and Fury, like, oh, actually, I think I brought this up in the Lucian episode. The fact during that whole interaction with Hybern, he is again, the horse blinding analogy.
Mm-hmm.
He is hyper focused on Feyre. He doesn't give a shit about her sisters, doesn't care all that Ianthe fucking ratted them out, and, you know, a member of his court ratted out his love in, you know, he's not seeing. I don't even think he noticed like Lucian found his mate. I think he was so hyped. He didn't know what to do because then as soon
when they got back and in like the beginning of the third book, I still don't think he noticed that Lucian had a mate.
Did he ever ask? I don't think he ever asked Lucian about what, you know, never had a bro moment like a Cassian or Az moment where, you know, he said, "Hey bro, like you have a mate," and that's pretty wild.
That's cool. I can't relate.
And I think
honestly.
Actually, Liesl, you bring up a good point. I think Tamlin was so delusioned that Feyre was the chosen one and I think Ianthe had a part of this, like had a part in this in terms of making him think that the mating bond was going to snap into place. That's why he was so focused on it.
So he was in his mind already calling her his mate.
Whether or not he made up his own, Tamlin is powerful in a sense. Obviously not as much as our boy, but in a sense that, yeah, of course, he's still a High Lord. He's still powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if he fucking saw the mating bond when there wasn't one.
Right. So he would tell himself that his mate's been kidnapped by his most dreaded enemy.
Which we do have to like say that for one moment. I think that was when I think Tamlin was dead for me.
Mm-hmm.
Finding out that Rhys and Tamlin were friends and that Rhys cared about Tamlin, taught him Illyrian moves, gave him weapons, you know, treated him like a brother because he never, again, this was like, I think a little bit before Cassian and Az, but treated him like part of his own. Yeah. And then Tamlin goes and tells his terrible father, not only where his mother and sister, women, and I wouldn't say Rhys's mother was defenseless, but I would imagine his sister wasn't either. But you don't touch, like, obviously in a fantasy, women are not defenseless or not, you know, but that is bad.
And also, the fact that Rhys had told Tamlin that he was supposed to meet them there suggests that they were also planning to kill Rhys, who is the son of a High Lord, suggesting they wanted to start a war with the Night Court.
And the fact that also Tamlin went with them and didn't give a fuck, didn't try to, obviously he was a kid, but didn't even try to stop these two innocent women.
And then was surprised when they came back for revenge.
Well, and again, we have to remember, even no matter what Rhys's parents, you know, their issues, it was still his mate. It was still his lover of sorts. Yeah. And that was an open rebellion, open declaration. And the fact that he never told Feyre and made it seem like Rhys was just this asshole who didn't deserve kindness, it's like, okay.
Yeah, clearly Rhys was the bad guy.
That is rose-tinted glasses if I'd ever... And the thing is, Rhys even saved him. Because his dad was going to kill Tamlin too when they rebelled. Mm-hmm. And he let him live. Because obviously Rhys, you know, because as we know, Rhys respects women, but he didn't know his father was going to kill Tamlin's mother. He didn't know that.
He thought it would just be the brothers and the father.
Because that's what Rhys's dad said. He's like, we're not the type of males to kill innocent women. But I guess that didn't really matter to him.
I guess that didn't work out.
But no, that's where I knew Tamlin was dead for me. And so then, you know, ACOTAR going on, no sympathy. I, you know, was so heated from the end of Mist and Fury that I didn't care what happened to him at the beginning of the war. You know, the whole beginning section where she's pretending be back. And, you know, the thing is, he was still in his ways, even after, you know, he found out she was a fighter, her power. I mean, that's a whole nother thing added to their relationship that we can talk about at another time, because her power was definitely something he was wanting to keep on the down low, because she was such a, she was such a diamond and he wanted to keep her, but no, that's not how that works. No, but it's not. He kept, it's almost like, you know, a what if scenario. What if I went back and she saw the life now she has with Rhys? It's one of those moments where she goes back to what she did have and it's like, oh my god, I was treated terribly.
It's like, oh wait, this is what like respect is like?
Right So the whole beginning, obviously we don't see necessarily much of Tamlin because it's a lot of, court scheming and, the Hybern people coming in, but Tamlin lets obviously that was part of their deal, but he just lets the Hybern commanders come in and
run the place, basically.
And again, we mentioned it, but the whole whipping scene was just harsh because
it made me so mad.
Well, it was that really good quote of when you heard you would probably remember it more than I would, but when the whip sound cracked through their respect and the court.
Mm-hmm. It literally cracked. Well, it made a crack. The whip made a crack in between Tamlin, Ianthe, Hybern, and then the rest of the Spring Court.
Because and you brought this up a lot, even in the first book, like Tamlin loved his sentries. He made it a huge thing in the first book about how, it tore him up to send them out there. And some of them did get killed, other things.
Right. But then then Feyre came in and he lost focus of everything else. And then he thought he was doing everything in his power to keep her with him and protect her and keep her from the world all tangled like.
It was my favorite quote of Rhys's, and it was during Mist and Fury that totally represents Tamlin just throughout these last two books. Love can be a poison. He says that, and it is so true because that is such a even a real life application. Sometimes people think that they're doing something for love when it's legit just them I don't want to say going crazy, but they're doing something. Insane. They're doing something for the namesake of love, but it's not.
It's like you said, like they're being poisoned by love.
And so obviously Tamlin is not happy about her breaking up his court and the fact that but the thing is, even later they bring this up in Frost and Starlight and Silver Flame. The thing is, she didn't need to do much.
True.
He literally
already
did that
fallen
on
apart.
his own.
Yeah.
He did that on his own. Obviously she led that to happen, but he chose Ianthe over his own people. And that just threw it out the window. And I think he just became, after that, an exonerated lover of sorts because, I don't think I'll ever be as mad as the High Lords meeting.
That needs to be a whole nother episode.
Oh, just talking about, of course. The High Lord meeting will be like its own segment, basically. Because it is over like a couple chapters.
It is.
The fact that he was just, especially to someone who you thought was your mate, the love of your life, the fact that he openly disrespected her in front of not only other people. So, okay, comparatively to the other High Lords, maybe not Tarquin obviously we know that some of the other High Lords are, nicer people, but you're in a room of people who, I don't want to say, like, in the past have not necessarily been respectful of women or have seen women in a powerful role. Seeing Tamlin just degrade her as, talking about their sexual life, bringing up like how she sounds and, just trying to degrade her power. She walked in as the High Lady of the Night Court. And obviously that didn't make him happy.
Mated to the most powerful High Lord of them all.
Yes. And somehow tried to degrade her as a woman. And I think that's where I was like, bro, why? Just why?
That's
I know you're heartbroken, but the thing is, your own actions led you to that. There's no sympathy for you. There isn't. Not from me.
And definitely not now that you're insulting her more. That's not how it works.
Yeah. It's like he gave up trying to get her back.
It's like, well, if I can't have her, I'm just going to insult her till no one else wants her. It's like, no.
It's like, also, do you think that that's somehow going to do anything to her?
She literally has Rhys.
She's already proven herself to be strong and resourceful. You don't need to degrade it to a sexual thing. But obviously, putting that all aside, at the end, he does come through. He saves her. Well, he saves her twice. He saves her when Hybern was going to kill her when they went to go rescue Elaine after she got captured. And that's when he like switched sides or whatever, and he took his soldier
or realized his mistake or some shit.
I I was with Reese. I was in his corner. I didn't think Tamlin was ever going to fight with Hybern. It was just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, when they saved Reese. I mean,
yeah,
that I have to commend him for. He could have not. He could have said, fuck it,
right.
and then Reese wouldn't be around. But he saw how much, in that moment, he saw how much that she loved him. Loved him. And he's like, well, I mean, that was when he just accepted defeat right there.
And he told her, like, be happy, Feyre.
And, you know, I mean, obviously, I'm going to be still mad about that you know, I'm still going to be mad. But again, I can respect the effort. Because then now it leads him, you know, obviously in the last 2 books, Frost and Starlight and Silver Flame, he's just a downed male. I mean, it goes from, you know, Frost and Starlight where he's basically he's living by himself. Lucian comes in every now and then, but there's nobody in that whole manor. There's nobody. It's just him. Everyone left. And I think it was, because Reese brought up that there was no barrier. There was no thing, or sorry, no shield. Thank you. Thank you, brain. There was no shield around his house to get into.
Right. So you could just winnow right in, and he didn't even care. It's almost like he was, I think, and Sarah put it this way, it's almost like he was asking for someone to come in and kill him.
And it's like, I mean, no matter how mad I would get at a person, because, of course, obviously, you know, murderers, rapists, the like, okay, there's always a line, but anybody who just wants to die like that and is just so depressed, I mean, I would never want anybody to feel like that, no matter what they've done. Again, there's lines.
Right. But yeah, it definitely is not a good feeling.
Specifically with him, I mean, he doesn't necessarily deserve to die.
No, I think there is still a chance for a redemption arc.
But then, so it goes from him, you know, kind of being mangled, and honestly, his manor turning into thorns, turning into what you would imagine the Beauty and the Beast castle to look like at the beginning of the film. You know, thrown about, claw marks everywhere, just a disheveled man.
Instead of Beast to Prince, now it's Prince to Beast.
Dude, Sarah is a genius. That's so cool to me.
It is so cool.
And then of course we get to Silver Flame, and obviously it's just it's a cameo, but he's full on beast form. He's apparently to Eris, he's not going around in his quote unquote human form anymore. It's just
and like even when he like approaches, you know, Ness and Cass and Eris in that moment, like he doesn't even like transform back into human. He just stays as beast while talking to them, if you can even call it talking.
That's how he feels. That's how he feels about himself, because he thinks he
doesn't. Is also an interesting thing. Yeah, he feels like he doesn't deserve it, but he also seems to feel like he's a monster. He's a monster now. I feel like it's not like directly said, of course, but it definitely feels like he's thinking back on like now having that clarity moment of, why did I do that? I'm a monster for doing that.
Well, and obviously, I think, you're right. His hindsight is coming in. He's like, this is going to sound weird, but if I had just been more like Reese, I would have had Feyre. My life would be good right now. But also, I think that's his issue. I think the difference between Feyre and Reese's characters is of course, they need each other in like a lover and friend way, but they don't need each other.
Right. They want to be with each other.
There's a difference between the dependency that he turned into versus their like, of course, I wouldn't want my lover to die. I'm going to protect my lover. But at the same time, like, I can handle myself, babe. Just to let you know. So the fact that his life hinges on Feyre, that was his issue. So I totally agree with you. That's not healthy. That's definitely, I mean, obviously that is emotional abuser, mental behavior. I hope, and I said this in the beginning, I think I said this in the first spoiler episode. I think 2 things are going to happen in the future for him. I think he's either going to find somebody that fits with him more. I don't necessarily think he's going to find his mate, because you brought up something interesting, and I don't want to like get too much off topic because we're talking about him, but you brought up something about the mating bond in the last mini episode, that it's like, and that's something I feel like the community has also said, is that it's happening almost too often. I don't necessarily think that's the case, because with the sisters, I feel like it's a reckoning. I think with the sisters, I think because they're so special and they're going to be what changes the story for it to come, like this is just the beginning. I feel like Silver Flame is the start of a whole new era.
Yeah. Silver Flame's a beginning, for sure.
Definitely. Almost how Silver Flame was. Or, sorry, God.
Yes,
Yep.
that's correct.
How Court of Thorns was. It was a beginning, not an ending.
Yeah.
And so I think with him, I don't necessarily think he's going to have a mate, because I think that was just for the sisters. I don't think anybody else is necessarily going to have a mate. I mean, there could be, but I don't think there will. I think he'll just find an honest country girl. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the other idea that I had is, because if that adds to the turmoil. So he's either, okay, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. He's either going to find somebody, or he's going to find himself, and he's going to take his court back for himself. Or when the war eventually happens, or whatever conflict is going to arise, he's going to die saving Lucian. I think he's gonna die saving him, and then obviously that opens up a whole other political problem, because Tamlin doesn't have a
Supreme Court
successor. Yeah, and I know that the magic transfers to somebody. I mean, that would be interesting to see, because the magic always transfers to somebody, but we have heard, we haven't seen it yet, where, because Reese brought it up before, is that necessarily it won't go to someone in the bloodline, but it's, and like,
if there's no one in the bloodline,
because he doesn't have an heir, well, unless that we know of, have some bastard child going around. He, I mean, with all the times that he did the right,
he honestly could. He could. Watch it just be some, like, random fairy that we have no idea about, just suddenly pops up with the High Lord powers.
It's like the Robert Baratheon of Game of Thrones. Some people will get that reference, you will not.
I don't, but I can get the idea.
I think, yeah, so he's either gonna die saving Lucian, or he's gonna be with somebody and take back his court, which is a fitting end for him either way. I think he either needs to die in a heroic fashion, or kind of fucking take his life back. So I'm excited to see what's happening with him. I don't agree necessarily that he should have his own novel. I think that would be too much.
Maybe he could have a novella or something, like his redemption arc is a novella or something. But I find that even though I really dislike him, one, I don't hate him as much as I did in the second book, and I don't want him to die, which I was actually shocked realizing that I don't want him to die. I want him to have a redemption arc. I want him to be able to come back.
It's Sarah as a good author being able to, even if we necessarily hate a character, to somehow make it to the point where it's like, okay, but they've done this, and this as good things, and the sentimentality of their first relationship. So I like that. I like that inner turmoil, because it doesn't make it easy. I feel like sometimes in a lot of fantasy books, it's very simple in terms of, like, this person's bad and this person's good, and there's no, like, in between.
There's no gray.
So obviously Tamlin as a character, I think, was fundamentally needed for the first book.
Like, definitely a good first stepping stone.
An introduction into the world, but definitely, knowing that your first love necessarily isn't going to be your last.
Yes, which you keep bringing up.
Because it's so true. That's the only realistic way I can describe it. Like, in a realism way, to where it's like, yeah, we've all had that. Well, some of us. I wouldn't necessarily say I've had that, like, love or die kind of romance. But in a way where it's just like, I'm so deeply, deeply in love with this person.
Only in my dreams.
So anyway, Tamlin is a good character, but we don't necessarily want him to die, but also he needs to be more respectful of women.
He needs to get his shit together.
He's get his shit together. I can make you a list, my man. I can make you a list of what
your shit together.
Oh my god, this is the last thing I'll say. He's that guy in the bar that will make, like, a really gross pickup line to a girl and then look back at his friends and be like, well, what did I say?
You're right. Yeah, that is him.
Like, really gross, like, okay, the first thing I'm thinking of is that there was this really gross pickup line that is like, hey babe, did your couch pull out? Cause I don't. I could just imagine him saying that to some chick, and then, cause when he walks up, he's some hot guy, right? Then you hear him talk, say one thing, and she's just like, ugh, get away. And then he's like, but Lucian, man, what did I say, man? It's like,
Lucian
dude,
just comes up, pats his shoulders, just like, you really need some work. You haven't had much experience these past few decades.
You really don't know how to talk to women. We probably should have realized that.
We probably should have practiced, one-on-one practice.
we hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, comment to us, email us what you would like us to talk about, or if there's a conspiracy theory that you would like us to talk about, we'd love to hear it.
I'm surprised I didn't bite into him more. I thought I was totally gonna get like super angry.
I was like, I told you could have at it. This was your episode to do
I
it.
know. Oh well, I guess I'll have to.
Don't
when
worry.
we talk about their relationship later, I'll bite into him.
Oh, but the audience will know when we actually talk about it in the season where it happened. Oh yeah, 100%.
Because again, I think I'm realizing, after this first talk is like, I don't hate him, so I don't really have anything against him as a person. I have something against their relationship and how he treated her. So once we get to that episode, that's where I'll let loose.
Right. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed. Our next episode is, chapters 22 to 26, talking about, speaking of their romance, the post-Callan Mai reaction. So we're excited for that. And we're excited for our YouTube live. I'm going to keep promoting that YouTube live on November 4th. Yeah, so it'll be on November 4th. I'll have more. We'll make it an actual calendar event on YouTube live. So we'll talk about more about that later. But we hope you enjoyed.
Yes, we're excited. Bye.
Bye.